here I'm gonna be the devil advocate for the West and the G7 and the Western countries. One of the criticisms that comes often, people say that, African head of states tends to start criticizing Western involvement in the affairs, in the internal affairs, only and when only if only when they're about to mess up either the constitutions or either they're about to do something that may displease the international democratic community. So that's why they start talking about sovereignty. My country is sovereign. We are independent. We are free to do whatever we want. And in the President Tshisekedi comment, he even came back to say how they can come criticize about human rights, because what is pretending on the other side is say when China and Russia comes here, when they come here, they don't criticize our human rights governance. They don't criticize our human rights situation. They don't talk about it. So many would say that yes, it's easy to call to say we are independent. We should have a different approach, which I agree. I agree totally about that. That there is a time where we have to remove that sense of like patriarchal hierarchical sense of where we come to tell you what you need to do and what you have to do and everything, to kind of understanding what you need to do and what you want. But on the other side, we cannot also behave as if, especially head of state in Africa, behave as if when our partners, and especially those donors coming giving us billions of dollars because of our own bad governance, because of our own corruption, and when they come they ask for accountability, we behave as if no, they're coming to meddle in my internal affairs. So this is for me a bit of my criticism on that approach. It's really, they pick and choose the moment they decide to become friendly or to raise the independence and sovereign perspective on that situation.
Well, first point to make on that is where where you have a situation where a particular country receives aid, whether for budgetary concerns or I give you money. I mean, let's go away from politics. If you have a friend or a relative
Yeah.
that you give money to run his home, right?
Mm-hmm.
You If you are giving him advice or you are scolding him, people are really going to be like, yeah, you have grounds to scold this person or to criticize this person because you invest in that person. That person takes your money, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
this is all politics, but it's basic. It all comes down to human psychology and human behavior.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, what gives the West the position or any form of justification to lecture and to say this is how you should run a government, this is how you should do those things, is because they see themselves as vested interest because their money is involved, and that is one excuse, or that's one way to explain why they act in the manner in which they do. However, I'm going to say that even in countries where they are not financially involved, the attitude is still there, and they still have that. We are the standard, and you have to learn from us.
Yeah.
So there is that. But to your point, that African countries or African leaders tend to select and choose when they raise up this issue of sovereignty. Uh, I mean, it goes back to the push and pull that you have in relationships,
Mm-hmm.
particularly at the state level. If as a country you lecture me, and I don't have any other way to make you not lecture me,
Mm-hmm.
or to not criticize me, then I'm going to go with the international norms card to say, look, I'm a sovereign state. You can't tell me what to do. Which, like you agree to, it's actually fact and it's true.
Mm-hmm.
uh, to a large extent, over the years. Also, another issue that African countries and everyone all over the world, you could say, or most people all over the world who say have with the West, is where they're not essentially standard bearers of human rights,
Yeah, that's
in
true.
in in their foreign conduct and even domestically in many instances. So why should we have to listen to people who they themselves are not perfect? So I think that is the complexity of the situation. So on one hand, you have the issue of hypocrisy. Then there's the issue of, yes, I can criticize you because I'm actually giving you funding for your
Exactly. Yeah.
country. But of course, there's also the international norms that says, no, you really cannot just do that, even when you give me finance, just like between you and your family, friends, or anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is no rule written down anywhere,
Yeah.
but in international relations there's a rule written down that you cannot you know you know
Exactly.
uh, impede on my sovereignty. Yeah.
Exactly. You talking about hypocrisy just reminds me one of a piece I've wrote a few weeks back when I was saying that the hypocrisy of the international community in the crisis that we see, for example, in Gaza, makes it
Mm.
really much more difficult today for the West to come with a narrative to kind of lecture African countries, and it's also making it also opening doors for the narrative for China in Africa when China is saying that we need to reform the international system. We need a new rule based order, because the one that we have right now is much more US Western centered than anything else. And because of how we see they're behaving, this kind of narrative will start to take shape in Africa, where you have a lot of head of state who say, yes, we really don't agree with the way the West does things. And especially when we saw how they reacted with the war in Ukraine with Russia, and the way they're behaving right now in Gaza faced toward Israel, you kind of wonder why the double standard. And African country, when they see that, when they listen to that, they're kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. That for us, the international rule-based order is not really fair as it was presented to be. It's much more hypocritical kind of rule-based order. And when China comes and say, you need to support me to have a new configuration of the rule-based order, they kind of say, yeah, we're gonna go with you.
Yeah. The first point I want to make on that, very very good analysis, by the way, very convincing. The first thing I want to say regarding to that is, we don't even need the Russians or the Chinese to come tell us that the system is unfair.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because since independence till now, generation after generation of leaders, even after independence, we could see how unfair several countries were treated, even in the decolonization process.
Process. Yeah.
The reason you have the Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger having coups today, and seeing all of the agreements and pacts with France that they are counseling, if you read those documents, there's no way you would agree that a sovereign country will sign this, or this is even a fair
A fair
arrangement.
trade. Yeah. Yeah.
So overall, we on our own have been very, very vocal without any foreign partner telling us this is unfair. We know what unfair is, because we actually went through colonialism, and then the decolonization process, was very was very incomplete in several ways. And since we've seen, Russia and China, with the West having, a lot of contention in their relationship with China, Russia, trying to build an alternative system. China, doesn't, and many countries, I would even say, do not recognize the rules-based international order, as it is said, because nobody knows what the rules are.
Exactly.
There's international law,
Obviously, it's not that.
right? International law, which we know, based on the UN Charter, this is what all countries, at least countries who are in the UN system, have agreed to,
Hmm.
and that is very clear for everyone to see. We know what happens where there's conflict somewhere, what organ of the UN is supposed to act, what's the role of the United Nations Security Council. They even came up with the United for Peace formula, several years ago. So that is well established. But the rules-based international order comes across to anyone who has paid any attention to it,
Hmm.
as essentially, you know, and I've described this in several discussions, to say it's like myself and my friends we set up rules, and then we're going to impose it on the rest of the world without them even knowing what the rules are. So we just decided
What are
to
the
decide
goals of
what
those
the
rules?
rules would be exactly, and when and where it should be applied. So that's the challenge. And African countries, in my opinion, they do not want to be cajoled in, and not nobody actually wants to be cajoled into such a system. Some people want to play within it if they win. And I told this to a few friends during an event, actually with a US based organization. I said, look, if we had countries like Japan and South Korea in Africa, countries who won under this the hierarchy and the system that was created post 45 and even post Bretton Woods, you would find many allies on the continent of Africa
Definitely, no question
today.
asked.
Yeah, but the way it is on the continent of Africa is that you can't find winners of the current system. So why would you now expect champions to emerge from a continent where there were no winners?
Yeah,
Right. So over the decades, what we've just had is countries who have not been able to industrialize, or they're just told, you know what, you're just going to be commodity suppliers.
but
That's
Ovigo,
fine. But
let me stop
yeah.
you there for a moment. Is it
Mm.
is it the rule? Is it the international system at fault, or is it internal country bad governance at fault in that case?
That's a very interesting question, and I would really like us to go in this direction. So let's look at how, when we left the colonial era, there were several countries who immediately
Yeah.
wanted to. I mean, many countries nationalized their resources, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had that in Ghana, we had that in Zimbabwe, in many countries across the continent. They saw that as a way to build some form of industrial base, and then piggyback off protectionism. Then they progressively liberalized. There was not a single country that didn't face pushback from the West. And as at the time, the West is and still is to a large extent, the home of foreign capital.
Yeah.
They were the ones that can give you access to technologies. They were the ones that can give you access to capital to invest. If in the first place, in this mind, China was not a big player then. Neither, of course, the USSR to some extent
Collapsed at
was
that
still an
time.
actor.
Yeah, it was still an
Yeah,
actor, but yeah.
yeah. But overall, if the model that was built when Germany, the United States, France were still the industrial powers, was importing raw materials from former colonies now to their factories. Well, that's what African countries were faced with. When you nationalize, the money to build your industry and supply chain, it's not going to fall from the sky. You still need to go to where capital was, and capital wasn't coming from the West, because they do not want African countries to go in that direction. So it is not written down as, we will not let you industrialize,
Yeah.
or we will not let you go into local refining of your resources. But it's just by withholding capital, that is what you get,
But
where there was
Ovigwe,
no alternative.
but
But now,
Ovigwe,
if you look at
yeah,
Zimbabwe
go ahead.
and some other countries, look at Zimbabwe, for instance. Just last week, we saw news in Mukoto,
Yeah,
in Zimbabwe. See what they've been able to achieve, for instance, or what they're trying to do with steel, with lithium. See what Indonesia is also doing with nickel, for instance.
yeah.
Indonesia is able to block nickel export raw and say, we want to do this. But why are they able to do it now? Because they have alternative people who can make those investments. If it was only the West that could put capital into Indonesia, they would not be able to succeed in doing what they are going to do.